The number one reason product teams fail? It isn't a bad strategy. It's a strategy that nobody's actually following. You've seen it. The big offsite, the shiny vision deck, and then 3 months later, everyone's quietly drifted back to doing their own thing. And the work has almost nothing to do with the plan. The strategy's sitting in a slide somewhere, gathering dust. Let that sink in. I'm Ross Webb, and after years leading product teams at Amazon, Just Eat and beyond, here's what I've learned. Closing that gap between the strategy and what people actually do every day is the most underrated job in product. And it's exactly where Product Ops wins. Today, 4 operators show you how, from the vision at the top, all the way down to the change that finally sticks. This episode's brought to you by airfocus by Lucid. Product teams are shipping faster than ever, but speed without direction is just a faster way to build the wrong thing. airfocus is the structured foundation that keeps strategy intact as you scale, so your team always knows what to build and why. Find out more at airfocus.com. Coming up in this episode, Martin Willis on why a clear, shared vision is the compass everything else hangs off. Archi Sarkar Goyal on the business case, giving your teams the why behind the what and owning the ROI. Kassim Alani on winning buy-in by treating product ops like a product and bringing the skeptics with you. Marielle Velander on change management, the one skill that makes a new way of working actually stick. So if alignment is the job, where does it start? Not with a tool, not even with a roadmap. It starts with the destination. And Martin Willis has the simplest, sharpest example of that I've heard in a long time.
I think with any operation, whether it be as a department or as an organization, as a company, it's really important that we have alignment within the teams. And when we go on that journey, we need to understand the destination that we want to reach. And that destination translates into the vision. So from an organizational, having that clarity on the vision statement of the organization and what that represents to everyone, and then everyone understanding it becomes a foundation. And through that, you can then translate that into the plan, the mission, and how you're going to get there. And I think in products, that's so important because it helps influence and shape what you're asking about, how we're looking at the market, and how that may influence what we want to therefore create. And importantly, it helps us to stay true on why we're creating it, the problems we're going to solve, the value we're going to create, and then how do we then take that to the market through its launch and sales campaign. And I think there's just been so many examples where that clarity hasn't been there in an organization and people just do their own thing, often with good intention, but they drift off and do their own thing. And then when you try and write the narrative and you try and bring it together, it doesn't always hit the point. So you have failed sales campaign, you create products that actually don't solve a problem or solve a problem, which is now being addressed. And so it acts as that compass to give people guidance on their journey through development, through deployment and commercial success. One of the best stories I heard about this was from a consultant friend, and they'd been called in to help improve the performance of an organization. And they'd come in and done a look and gone away and things had improved. So he walked into the office and said, "Look, what's happened?" And they said, "Oh, we've got a sticker on our phone." And what do you mean you've got a sticker on your phone? Yeah, the CEO's told us to put a sticker on our phone, which has the vision statement on it. And if we get a phone call that doesn't align to the vision or doesn't bring that vision to life, we're empowered to put the phone down. And it just, to me, was a great example of how the organization made that decision on the destination and wanted to make sure people stayed true to that journey.
A sticker on the phone. Permission to put the call down if it doesn't serve the vision. That's not a poster on the wall. That's a vision people can actually use. But here's the thing. A destination on its own won't move anyone. Your teams and your finance partners need to know why this product and why now. That's where business acumen comes in. Here's Archi Sarkar Goyal.
2 dimensions, which I have found incredibly valuable when it comes to product operations being effective. One is a very clear understanding of why you're building the thing that you're building. And this becomes increasingly important as you're interfacing with developer teams. So developer teams are no longer the folks who just go build whatever the product manager requires, right? They are kind of to get them engaged and inspired almost. You have to tell them the why. And part of the why actually becomes the business case of why is this product important? Who is asking for it? What is it going to change in the world before the developer actually touches it? There's that translation layer between product and engineering that product operations almost always plays. And then, of course, is like so I would say it's twofold, coming back to the business acumen point, right? It is not only inspiring the teams to get them convinced on why they're building the things, the why behind the what, right? And then the other aspect of that is now you have to keep your stakeholders sort of aligned on the ROI that is coming out of this investment that they're making.
The why behind the what. That translation layer between product and engineering and the ROI, you've got to keep your stakeholders aligned on. But even with a rock solid business case, you still have to win the room. People have history. People have turf. The old way had its fans. So how do you actually get buy-in and handle the detractors? Here's Kassim Alani.
Or I asked him and was like, hey, how would you do road mapping? And I'm sure any product ops person who's come into an organization or maybe he's been at an organization has been like, can you solve road mapping for us? And like anyone can put together a set of templates, can go look at all the reference points of how to do road mapping and say, okay, we can just copy and paste what maybe Coda has done or Notion has done. But you're probably set up for failure, right? Because every organization has contextual differences, cultural differences that inform how they work, how they plan, how they organize. And so what you need to understand first is like, what is the actual problem with road mapping and how we do it today? So I think like this is actually where it's really important to go do your homework and how you can, one, position yourself as someone who can solve problems, but then also be someone who has longstanding impact or a function that has longstanding impact. So the first thing is like, when you get an ask from your leader or someone who's coming to you as a product operations person at your organization is say like, I'm actually going to go do discovery. What I like to do is think about product operations as like actually a product team. So what we did first is in positioning our team to get leadership buy-in was like, we're going to actually go do our homework first and come to you with like an actual readout on what is the actual problem that we want to solve. Road mapping is not the problem. The problem is we are unable to structure and understand our work in a way that enables us to translate how the product org is going to help us achieve our business outcomes and then continuously align stakeholders on the path.
Treat product ops like a product. Do the discovery. Reframe the problem and build your champions. Brilliant. But buy-in on day one is not the same as a change that lasts. Getting people to actually change how they work and keep working that way when the novelty wears off. That's a craft all of its own. Here's Marielle Velander on change management.
The book Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. That was the first book I read about change management that helped me, inspire me to sort of build out that skill set as well. And it talks a lot about directing the writer, so to say, so the logical, analytical aspect of people's mind with the emotional element. So how do you motivate the emotional side of people, but also direct them and give people the clarity they need to then understand the path forward? And I found it really clearly, how do I really make the why of this change clear and then make the how really broken down into digestible and manageable pieces. So it feels like we're taking one step at a time. It doesn't feel overwhelming. What COSI then helped me do is when I was applying some of these change initiatives, not just in sort of at a higher level, what I would get from a book, but I was able to also use the ADKAR framework, which I found was immensely valuable in tracking how much buy-in I had among the key stakeholders who I wanted to change in behavior. And the ADKAR framework basically walks you through whether people are aware of the change and the why, whether they desire the change, whether they have knowledge of like the change, what's going to come next once we changed, whether they have the ability to change, and whether they are able to reinforce the change. And I use this framework consistently to identify all the different stakeholder groups and then where I have them on the process. And sometimes someone will have like built the ability, they're desiring the change, but then all of a sudden they'll go back to square one because they'll get doubts or something. And using this framework has helped me note that quite proactively and also pinpoint sort of where do I need to focus my attention on getting people on board.
So here's the through line. A strategy nobody's aligned behind is just a slide. The real job, the one that makes you indispensable, is turning that strategy into something the whole organization actually follows. Martin showed us it starts with a destination clear enough that everyone can use it. Archie gave us the why behind the what, the business case that earns the build and protects the ROI. Kassim showed us how to win the room and bring the detractors along with you. And Marielle gave us the discipline that makes the change actually stick. That's the job. That's why I keep banging the drum for product ops. It's the function that closes the gap between the plan and the work. If this helped, subscribe and hit the bell. We share new product leadership insights every week. Connect with our guests on LinkedIn. They're brilliant people and well worth following. And a final thank you to airfocus by Lucid for backing this episode. If your team's shipping fast but the strategy keeps slipping, that's exactly what they're built to keep intact. airfocus.com. Until next time, from me, Ross Webb. Bye for now.